The morning sun spread its golden fingers across the wide savanna, casting a warm light over the dew-drenched grasses and thorny shrubs. A gentle breeze stirred the acacia branches, and birds flitted from one perch to another, their songs weaving into the calm hush of dawn. It was a beautiful, peaceful morning, but peace on the savanna was often an illusion. Kibo, the silverback gorilla, moved with deliberate strength along the forest's edge. His thick, dark fur rippled with muscle beneath the pale silver that streaked his back. The solitude suited him. He had chosen it years ago, building a life of silence and thought on the outskirts of the forest. No clan, no calls, no burdens, only trees, fruit, and memory. He reached up to grasp a cluster of ripe figs dangling low from a twisted branch. As he sat under the shade of the tree, chewing thoughtfully, his sharp eyes scanned the savanna. Even in peace, he watched. Even in silence, he listened. Then it came, a cry. Thin and sharp, it cut through the gentle murmurs of the morning like a thorn through flesh. A second cry followed, louder this time. Panicked, Kibo stood. The fig fell from his hand. He knew that sound. Somewhere close, a young creature was in trouble. Kibo hesitated. His massive hands curled around the bark of the tree beside him. Years of isolation urged him to turn away. It wasn't his concern. The savanna was full of dangers. This was the way of things. The weak fell. The strong survived. He had no place in the stories of others anymore. But memory rose to the surface. Unbidden. A sun-drenched hill, the body of a great lion lying still. His friend, Asari, golden mane streaked with dust and blood. A final breath, a final whisper. If ever you can, protect them, protect my pride. Kibo's jaw tightened. He turned and bounded toward the sound. He moved swiftly through the tall grass, parting the blades with his powerful arms. The cries grew louder, more frantic. He reached a dry gully at the base of a slope, where the ground was cracked and bare. And there, trapped against a rocky outcrop, was a lion cub. Tiny, trembling, with golden fur dulled by dust and fear. And circling him, teeth glinting in the morning light, were 4 hyenas. They laughed as they moved. That hideous sound like broken bones grinding together. They darted in and out, snapping their jaws, testing the cub's courage, savoring the fear. Leo crouched low, trying to look brave. His little tail swished with defiance. But his legs trembled beneath him. He had been looking for his mother when he strayed too far. The scents were wrong, the land unfamiliar. Now he was alone, and the hyenas had found him. One lunged. Kibo landed between them with a roar that shook the air. Dust exploded around him as his fists slammed into the earth. The hyenas skidded back, yelping in surprise. The largest of them, thick-necked with a scar across one eye, stepped forward and snarled, "Zarok." Well, Zarok hissed. "What's this? A forest beast playing guardian?" Kibo said nothing. He stood tall, chest broad and still, his eyes locked onto Zarok's with quiet fury. The other hyenas circled, uncertain now. "This cub's not yours, gorilla," Zarok growled. pacing slowly. You should walk away. Go back to your trees and your fruit. Leave this to the savannah. Still, Kibo did not speak. He stepped back once, just enough to shield the cub behind his leg. Leo looked up in awe. Fear momentarily forgotten. Do you know what happens? Zarok sneered. To those who interfere. Kibo moved. It was a blur, a swing of his arm, a thunderous blow. One of the circling hyenas was sent sprawling, yelping in pain as it tumbled through the dust. Zarok snarled and lunged, jaws wide. Kibo caught him mid-air, slammed him down, and drove his fist into the ground inches from Zarok's throat. The earth cracked. Silence. The hyenas backed away. Zarok snarled, limped to his feet, and spat into the dirt. This isn't over, ape, he growled. You've made a mistake. Kibo's voice was like a drumbeat in the stillness. Go. They left. When the last of their shadows disappeared over the ridge, Kibo turned. The cub was still trembling, wide-eyed. What's your name? Kibo asked, voice low but gentle. Leo, the cub whispered. You are far from your pride. Leo, I got lost. I was looking for Mama. Kibo nodded slowly. He looked out across the plains. Somewhere out there, the cub's family was searching. All grieving. Leo nudged closer to the gorilla's leg. Thank you. Kibo looked down at him and saw Asari's eyes. Bold and unyielding, he felt something stir within his chest. Not the loneliness he had grown used to. Something older. Something he had buried. We must find your pride. Kibo said. It is not safe here. Leo stood, legs steadier now. Will you come with me? Kibo hesitated again, but this time it was only for a moment. Yes. The two of them began to walk. One large, silent, and shadowed by memory, the other small, brave, and full of questions. The morning light followed him as they crossed the ridge. And somewhere in the distance, birds continued their song. The promise had not been forgotten. And in that fateful meeting between a gorilla and a lion cub, something ancient stirred. The beginning of a bond. And the first step on a path neither of them yet understood. The afternoon sun blazed down on the savannah, no longer soft and golden but harsh, unforgiving. Shadows shrank beneath the acacia trees, and the air shimmered with heat. The tall grasses that once danced in the breeze now stood still, stiff, as if holding their breath. Dust clung to every surface, rising in lazy plumes with each step across the dry earth. Kibo moved with careful purpose, the young cub Leo keeping close beside him. It had been hours since their encounter at the dry gully, and the two had crossed ridge after ridge, weaving through brush and outcroppings, staying away from open ground as much as possible. Kibo's senses were on high alert. The silence was unnatural. Leo hadn't spoken much since the rescue, his voice subdued and his eyes scanning the horizon the way Kibo's did. Fear had not yet left the cub's small frame, but there was trust now, deep, instinctive, and Kibo could feel it in every step the cub took behind him. Then came the sound. It began as a low, rhythmic thudding, like distant drums beating in the earth. Then came the growls, faint at first, then rising, dozens of them. Laughter, cruel and sharp, carried on the hot wind. The kind of laughter that promised pain. Kibo stopped. His hand shot out and pulled Leo behind a boulder. He didn't need to see them. He knew. Zarok had returned. Kibo peeked around the rock. Atop a nearby ridge, half shrouded in swirling dust, stood Zarok, the hyena's scarred face twisted into a triumphant snarl. His pack spread out behind him, lean, fast, and hungry. They moved like smoke, eyes gleaming, claws scraping at the dry soil. Zarok lifted his head and let out a guttural howl. Then they charged. Kibo didn't think. He grabbed Leo with one arm, cradling the cub to his chest, and exploded into motion. Dust erupted beneath his feet as he sprinted away from the ridge. The sound behind them was deafening, snarls, barks, and laughter, echoing like war drums. The chase had begun. The wind tore through Kibo's fur as he ran, the heat slamming into him like waves. He dodged rocks, hurdled roots, and tore through tall grass with Leo held tightly in his grip. The cub clung to him, eyes shut, his small heart pounding against Kibo's chest. Behind them, the hyenas gave chase. They were fast, faster than most predators when hunting in numbers. Kibo could hear their claws scrabbling across stone, the grass parting in waves as they pursued. Some darted to the left, others to the right, trying to flank him. Zarok's voice echoed across the plains. "You can't run forever, ape." Kibo didn't respond. His legs were pistons, his lungs pulling in air and heat. His mind raced, searching for terrain, anything that could slow the pack. A riverbed, a thicket, a ravine. Then, through the dust, he saw it, an old dried-up riverbed ahead, its banks steep and treacherous. Kibo veered toward it. The earth dropped sharply. He didn't slow. With a roar, he leapt down the embankment, landing hard, rolling, shielding Leo with his body. The cub squeaked in surprise but was unharmed. Kibo sprang up and ran along the base of the riverbed, the cracked mud giving him traction. But the hyenas were relentless. Some were already descending the sides, scrambling down with eerie agility. Others ran along the rim, laughing and yipping, waiting for a chance to strike from above. A rock tumbled beside them, then another. Zarok leapt from above, landing at the bottom of the riverbed in a burst of dust. He blocked their path, teeth bared. Kibo skidded to a stop. Behind him, the pack was closing in. Zarok advanced slowly, tail twitching. "You should have walked away," he snarled. "This isn't your war." Kibo set Leo gently on the ground behind him. "I made a promise," he said, his voice deep and even. Zarok's eyes narrowed. "Then die with it." He lunged. Kibo moved like a storm. His fist connected with Zarok's face midair, sending the hyena crashing into the embankment. Two others charged from the side. Kibo swung wide, sending one tumbling back and dodging the other with a sidestep that kicked up a wave of dust. "Run!" he shouted to Leo. The cub hesitated. "Run!" Leo bolted, scrambling up the far bank of the riverbed. Kibo followed, fending off a hyena that tried to bite his leg. He grabbed a loose branch from the ground and swung it in a wide arc. scattering the pack just enough to give him a few precious seconds. He reached the top. Leo waited there, panting. Kibo grabbed him and ran again. They darted into a rocky ravine. Narrow and twisting, the walls loomed high, and the path forced the hyenas to follow single file. Slowing them, Kibo used every advantage, shoving boulders down the path. Leaping over fishes the hyenas had to scramble around. Still, they came. Dust clogged Kibo's lungs. His vision blurred with sweat. But he ran. Finally, a break in the rocks, a split path. Kibo didn't stop to choose. He took the left fork, praying it would lead him somewhere, anywhere, safe. And then, miraculously, he saw it, a collapsed tree, wedged between two cliffs. Just beyond it, dense forest. If they could reach the trees, they could lose them. Kibo poured everything into one final sprint. The roar of the hyenas filled his ears. Closer than ever, he could feel hot breath at his heels. He vaulted up the incline, Leo clinging to his arm. The tree groaned as they scrambled across it. Then, snap! The wood gave way beneath them. Kibo twisted midair, clutching Leo close, and slammed into the forest floor below. Branches cracked. Dust rose. Pain lanced through his shoulder. But they were alive. And for the first time since the chase began, there was silence. He lay there for a moment, panting, the forest dense and dark around them. The sounds of the savanna were muffled now. The hyenas would not follow into the deep wood. Not yet. Not without caution. Leo stirred in his arms. "Are we safe?" Kibo closed his eyes, his breath ragged. For now. Above them, Zarok's voice rang faint and furious. "You can't hide forever." But the trees offered their shadows. And in that moment, they had survived. The chase was not over. But so long as Kibo could still stand, he would run, he would fight, he would protect. Because a promise made beneath a dying sun still lived inside him, and he was not ready to let it die. The forest wrapped them in a veil of shadow and silence. Cool, damp air clung to their fur, a stark contrast to the blistering heat of the savanna. Kibo moved with the weight of exhaustion in his limbs. But his mind stayed sharp. He could not let fatigue claim him. Not now. Not with Leo still clinging to his shoulder. Breath warm against his neck. Behind them, distant rustling reminded him that Zarok's pack was not far. The hyenas had not forgotten. They were sniffing, circling, waiting for weakness. Kibo knew they would not give up until blood was spilled. He pressed forward through the dense undergrowth, weaving between gnarled roots and fallen trees. The terrain turned rocky, sloping upward into a narrow canyon flanked by towering cliffs of rust-colored stone. It was a treacherous path, but it was also an opportunity. "This way," Kibo whispered, though Leo was silent and wide-eyed. The cub's legs dangled as he was carried. Too tired to walk, but his gaze never left Kibo's face. Kibo heard the hyenas drawing closer, the dry snap of twigs under paw. The faint, gurgling laugh of Zarok. The pack was splitting, fanning out to trap them from all sides. He had to act. With one hand, he pulled loose a smooth, heavy stone from the ground and turned toward the opposite cliff face. He spotted a narrow ledge and threw the stone with all his might. It clanged against the rock and bounced down into a ravine on the far side. For a moment, the hyenas paused, confused by the noise. It worked. Kibo didn't wait. He pushed deeper into the canyon, where a dense tangle of vines hung across the path. He dragged a thick branch behind him and wedged it between two narrow boulders just as he passed. Then he snapped a low-hanging tree limb, letting it fall across the trail like a trap. To an untrained eye, the path ahead would appear blocked. He climbed upward, scaling the jagged wall of the canyon with careful precision. Each handhold was tested before bearing his full weight. One arm cradled Leo, the other pulled him upward, inch by inch. Below, the hyenas reached the blocked path and snarled in frustration. Some turned away, fooled by the clattering stone. Others began to claw and chew through the barricade. Kibo and Leo reached a high shelf of rock. From there, he saw the riverbed, a winding, dry scar etched into the land beyond the canyon. It would be open ground again soon. They needed to lose the hyenas for good before reaching that. Kibo exhaled and set Leo gently on the flat stone beside him. "We'll rest here, just for a moment." Leo looked up at him. "Why are you helping me?" Kibo was quiet for a time. The wind stirred his fur, and he looked out across the land, memories dancing in his eyes. "Because someone once helped me," he said. Leo's ears drooped. "You could have run when they attacked." "I could have," Kibo agreed. "But you didn't." Kibo gave a small smile. "Almost imperceptible." "No, I didn't." They sat together in silence. Birds called from the distant canopy. A lizard darted across the stone, vanishing into a crack. The danger was not gone. But here, in this moment of stillness, a seed of something else began to grow. Then the sound returned, closer. "Zarok. They've split up again," Kibo said. "They're searching the cliffs." Leo stood, legs trembling, but determined. "What can I do?" "Hold on tight," Kibo said, "and trust me." He scooped Leo up once more and began moving along the ledge. It narrowed, rising even higher. The rock beneath his feet crumbled in places. But Kibo stayed balanced, focused. At the ledge's end, a steep drop plunged down to the dry riverbed far below. There was no way down except back, or a leap. Kibo looked over his shoulder. Hyenas were approaching along the ledge, sniffing the air. He turned back, studying the cliff wall opposite. A tree, twisted and ancient, stretched its branches toward them. A gap, just wide enough. Just close enough. "Hold your breath," Kibo said. Then he ran. With a roar, he launched from the ledge, body arcing through the air. The world slowed. The canyon wind howled in his ears. Leo gasped, burying his face into Kibo's fur. Then, impact. Kibo's free hand slammed against the tree trunk. His fingers gripped bark. His feet swung wildly in the air before finding a root. He hauled them both up onto the branch. Panting, the hyenas reached the edge too late. Zarok snarled furiously as he watched Kibo vanish into the forest canopy. "Run, ape!" he shouted. You'll only die tired." But Kibo didn't look back. He pressed forward through the trees. Climbing down the other side of the canyon wall. Vines swung beneath him, and he used them to descend slowly to the forest floor. They landed beside the dry riverbed. A shallow stretch of cracked mud and scattered stone. Ahead, thick brush created a natural choke point. Perfect. Kibo crouched and gathered a cluster of stones. He stacked them across a narrow passage in the brush. Then, using a sharp rock, he carved symbols into nearby bark, nonsense marks. But enough to confuse or slow the less clever hyenas. Finally, he found a hollow log and placed it across the trail. A false tunnel, a trap. Leo watched it all, wide-eyed. "You're not just strong," he said. "You think." Kibo glanced at him. "Survival is not only about strength. It's knowing where to stand, when to move, what to leave behind." Leo was quiet again. "I didn't know gorillas could fight like you," the cub said. Kibo gave a short breath. "We can. We just prefer not to." They walked again, the forest thinning now, giving way to rolling hills and the scent of water. As they crested one such hill, they saw it, a wide bend in the river, still flowing in a shimmering silver ribbon. Beyond it, in the distance, the faint sound of roaring, lion calls. Kibo's eyes narrowed. "That might be your pride." Leo's ears perked up. "It sounds like Mama." But before they could move, Kibo heard one last snarl behind them. Zarok, the scarred hyena, stood alone at the top of the hill, foam at his lips and madness in his eyes. He had followed, alone, too obsessed to wait for his pack. Kibo turned to face him. "Go," he said to Leo. "But, go." Zarok rushed. Kibo met him head-on. The clash was brutal, fangs against fists, fury against will. They rolled, kicked, roared, dust flew, stones scattered. Kibo took a bite to the arm but didn't stop. He lifted Zarok and slammed him into the earth. Zarok lay stunned, groaning. Kibo stood over him, bloodied but firm. He didn't finish him. He turned and walked away. Leo waited at the river's edge, eyes wide with awe. Kibo knelt beside him. "Go, find your pride. Aren't you coming?" Kibo looked across the water, then back at the trees. "Not yet," he said. "But you're not alone anymore." Leo looked down. Then, without thinking, he pressed his small head against Kibo's chest. "Thank you," he whispered. Kibo didn't reply, but he placed a massive hand on the cub's back and held it there a moment longer than necessary. And then Leo ran. Kibo watched until he was gone. The wind rose again. The hyenas would come. New challenges would rise. But something inside Kibo had shifted. In the face of death, he had chosen life. Not just his own, but the life of another. And for the first time in years, he did not feel alone. The sky burned with crimson as the sun began its descent behind the far horizon. Shadows stretched long across the savanna, spilling from the twisted trees and broken stones like dark fingers reaching toward night. On the highest mound for miles, a solitary hill of scorched earth and scattered bone, stood Kibo. Alone, bruised, and breathing hard. The wind carried with it the scent of dry grass, dust, and something darker, vengeance. He had led him as far as he could. Below the hill, the savanna churned with movement. Dozens of eyes gleamed in the half-light. Circling, creeping closer, the hyenas had regrouped. The momentary victories in the forest had bought time. But not peace. Now, the circle was closing. At its center was Zarok. The scarred hyena's silhouette was jagged against the horizon. His gait was uneven from the earlier fight. But his hatred burned brighter than the wounds. This was no longer about the hunt. It was pride, fury, and obsession. End of the road, ape, Zarok called, voice raw and rising with triumph. No trees to swing from. No rocks to hide behind. Just you and me. Kibo's chest rose and fell. Blood matted the fur on his arm. And his right shoulder throbbed with each breath. But he stood tall, unmoving. From behind a rock not far down the hill, Leo peeked up. The cub had followed him. Refused to stay behind with the pride. Kibo had ordered him to go. Leo hadn't listened. Now, he watched with wide, glinting eyes as the two beasts faced each other in the dying light. Zarok began to climb. The hyenas howled, forming a jagged circle at the base of the hill. Their shadows flickering like ghosts in the red light. They would not interfere. This was a challenge, a reckoning. Kibo stepped forward. Each footfall was a thunderclap. Each breath, a memory. He remembered Asari's last words. He remembered the fear in Leo's eyes. The laughter of the hyenas. The taste of dust and blood. The choice to protect. The choice to stay. Zarok lunged first. He came in low, fangs bared, claws flashing. Kibo met him with a roar that shook the very ground. The impact echoed across the hilltop. A collision of muscle and fury. They grappled, twisted, slammed into the earth. Zarok bit deep into Kibo's arm, drawing fresh blood. Kibo responded with a crushing blow to the ribs, lifting the hyena off his feet. Dust clouded the air. Grunts and snarls mixed with the cries of the watching pack. Zarok darted back, then slashed forward, aiming for the throat. Kibo ducked, twisted, grabbed the hyena by the scruff, and hurled him into a boulder with a crack that silenced the wind. But Zarok rose again. They circled, both wounded, both breathing like beasts on the edge of collapse. "You should have stayed in your forest," Zarok hissed, panting. "This world isn't yours." Kibo didn't answer. He moved. This time it was faster, more brutal. A flurry of blows, fists pounding like drums. Zarok screamed as he was driven back, pawing at the air, until one final strike sent him sprawling onto the dust-caked earth at the edge of the hilltop. The circle of hyenas fell silent. Kibo stood over Zarok, blood dripping from his hands, chest heaving. It would be so easy. One more strike, one breath of effort. End it. But Kibo didn't move. Zarok lay trembling, eyes wide with the realization that death had come close enough to taste, but had not bitten down. Then, behind Kibo, a sound broke through the silence. A roar, small, cracked, but a roar. Kibo turned. Leo stood beside him, trembling but defiant, his tiny chest puffed out. Eyes fierce. It was not a roar of fear. It was one of courage, of loyalty, of kinship. Kibo looked back at Zarok. Then he lifted his head, and roared. Not a scream of rage, but a sound so deep and resonant it rippled through the air like thunder. It was not for Zarok alone, it was for them all. A warning, a declaration. I am not prey, I am not alone. The hyenas backed away. Even the boldest among them dropped their gaze. Zarok, eyes wild, scrambled to his feet and limped away without another word. The pack followed. Slowly, the shadows withdrew from the mound, leaving only silence and the blood-red light of the sunset. Kibo swayed slightly. Leo rushed to his side, pressing against his leg. "You didn't kill him," the cub whispered. "No," Kibo said softly, "that would make me like him." Leo looked up. "You're hurt." Kibo nodded. "It will heal." They stood together, wind brushing against them, the sky turning from red to purple. Leo leaned against him, quiet. After a while, Kibo spoke again, his voice gentler than the wind. "You were brave. So were you." Leo replied. "You're always brave." Kibo smiled, faint and tired. "Not always. But I try to be. When it matters." And on that lonely hilltop, under a sky burning with the last light of day, a bond deeper than blood and stronger than fear was sealed. Not with words, but with silence, and presence, and the knowledge that sometimes the fiercest strength lies not in fighting, but in choosing when to stop. The first light of dawn broke gently across the savanna, painting the world in soft hues of gold and blue. The air was still, fresh with morning dew, and the grasses swayed with a light breeze that whispered through the acacia trees. Peace had returned, tentative, delicate, but real. Kibo sat quietly on a flat rock at the edge of the hill, a thin mist curling around his feet. His body ached. Every muscle reminded him of the battle the night before. The wounds on his arms and shoulder throbbed. But they were no longer angry, just sore. His breath moved slow and steady now. His heartbeat calm. Beside him, Leo lay curled in a patch of sun, tail flicking gently in his sleep. The cub had refused to leave Kibo's side, even after the danger had passed. In the quiet moments before sunrise, he had drifted off, feeling safe for the first time in days. Kibo watched the horizon. Then he saw them, a faint ripple in the tall grass, a blur of gold in the distance. Then more, dozens, moving as one, silent, graceful, powerful. The pride had returned. At the center of the formation moved a lioness with a coat like polished bronze and eyes that burned with fierce worry. She pushed forward ahead of the others, scanning the land, nose twitching, muscles tense. Kibo rose slowly. Leo stirred. His eyes blinked open, sleep still clinging to his lashes. Then he followed Kibo's gaze, and saw them. "Mama!" He leapt to his feet. Kibo stepped aside as the cub bounded down the hill, legs fast and clumsy. Dust trailed behind him like smoke. The lioness saw him at once. With a cry, a low, broken roar, she charged forward. The moment they met was a collision of fur and joy. She swept him into her paws, nuzzling and licking, inspecting every inch of him. Leo laughed and mewled and cried all at once, burying his face in her chest. The pride surrounded them soon after. Majestic lions with heavy manes and quiet strength. They stood back, watching, assessing. Kibo felt their eyes on him but didn't flinch. He met their gaze, calm and unafraid. The lioness lifted her head. Her eyes found Kibo's. Something passed between them, unspoken, ancient, not quite gratitude, not quite apology, just understanding. Kibo nodded once, and then he turned. Without a word, he began walking away, down the far side of the hill, into the forest's edge, where shadow still clung to the underbrush and the trees whispered his name. The sounds of the savannah began to fade behind him. But then, paws. Small, light paws sprinting over stone and soil. Kibo. He stopped. Leo was running toward him, kicking up little clouds of dust. The cub's chest heaved, his ears flat, but his eyes were bright and full. Kibo turned just as Leo reached him, and was wrapped in a tight, clumsy hug around his leg. I didn't get to say goodbye. Kibo looked down, one hand gently resting on the cub's back. You don't have to. I want to. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in sunlight and silence. Then Leo stepped back, planted his feet, and let out a soft roar, not fierce, not loud, but full of meaning. It was not a challenge. It was not a cry for help. It was thanks. Kibo smiled. He bent slightly, touched his forehead to Leo's, and then stood tall again. Stay strong, he said. Be the lion your pride needs. But remember, kindness is not weakness. Leo nodded. Kibo turned once more, vanishing slowly into the forest, each step quieter than the last, until only the sway of branches marked his passing. Leo watched him go. He didn't cry, he didn't call out again, but his eyes shimmered, and his heart felt larger than it ever had before. Behind him, his mother waited, the pride gathering once more in silent formation. Leo took a deep breath, turned away from the trees, and walked back to them, not as a lost cub, but as something more. He didn't look like a king yet, but inside, something had changed, something had begun, and in the quiet dawn, with the sun rising over the world once more, Leo knew this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.